This episode of Conversations on Dance is brought to you by Yumiko. Introducing Yumiko at Home. Post a picture or video wearing your favorite Yumiko and be entered to win a free piece. Just follow them on Instagram at Yumiko, tag them in your post, and use hashtag Yumiko at Home. They are choosing a winner every Friday, so be sure to click over to their Instagram for all the details. Remember, you can shop online anytime at yumiko.com. I'm Rebecca King-Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance.
This week, we are joined by Mikko Nissinen, Boston Ballet Artistic Director. Born in Helsinki, Mikko began his dance training at the age of 10 with the Finnish National Ballet School and launched his professional dance career at age 15 with the Finnish National Ballet. He went on to continue his dance training at the Kirov Ballet School in St. Petersburg, Russia. He danced professionally for 19 years with Dutch National Ballet, Basel Ballet, and as a principal dancer with San Francisco Ballet. In 2001, he was appointed Artistic Director of Boston Ballet. Now, nearly 20 years into his tenure as director, we talk with Mikko about his training and early career, his ambition to always be learning more about ballet, his aspirations to run a large company, and how he landed his position at Boston Ballet. Mikko also talks with us about leading the organization through numerous crises, including navigating the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mikko, here via Zoom. We've wanted you on the podcast for a long time, so we're really excited to, of course, get down to what has been almost a 2-decade role as the artistic director of Boston Ballet. But first, we want to start a little bit with your own training and career. So you were born in Finland and you began training at age 10. And we were wondering what sort of gave you the ballet bug, so to speak, at that age.
Well, I was a hyperactive kid who did every possible sport until I wore everybody, all the kids and adults in my neighborhood out. Mm-hmm. And then I would ask my parents to time me. I would run around the block, and it was about 5-minute run, and the rest of the evening I was trying to beat my own time. So obviously I wasn't very smart. But it's like I had so much energy, and it's I have this life energy that's just like I can't help. It just comes out, and then I through girls. I got interested. I was like, don't you have any guys that too? Isn't it for the boys as well? Mm-hmm. And little by little, the National Ballet School came recruiting, and in 6 months they started a boys' class with 23 guys in Finland.
Mm-hmm. Wow!
And so that sort of started. And after that, my perfectionism had a deep well where to throw it, and to be a professional dancer, it's such an impossible thing, in so many ways. Start taming that body of yours to be a really good tool for the choreographers, and then 4 years later, I was offered a professional contract. So it's almost like the profession chose me. I had just decided I want to become a professional dancer. I saw Misha Baryshnikov dance in Copenhagen on a tour with ABT, and it was like the Push Comes to Shove was a brand new piece, I think year old, and he did Donkey with Kelsey Kirkland, and the company was just at its heights, and so it was like I thought that was so much more interesting, the world of theater, than reality.
So, like you said, you got a first professional contract only 4 years later, 5 years later, at 15. Is that right? Yeah. With the Finnish National Ballet. So what were some of the things that you first performed with the company?
I think the very first production as a pro was a production of Till Eulenspiegel. And then right after that, I think, believe it or not, it was Jorma Elo and me, we got to do this pas de trois, pas de quatre in Cinderella. Mm-hmm. And then I think right after that, it was to Pas and Pas de Deux and Giselle for me, and Little Slave in Spartacus, and sort of a Jester in Swan Lake. So I was thrown immediately into the all the good stuff.
Is that something you were comfortable with at a young age? Like that sort of more virtuoso, the technical demands of something like Pezimpa or a jester role. Was that something you enjoyed?
I had a very strong technique.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess, that that was fun for me. And, I was dancing with these ballerinas who were like, seemed much older than, for me, they were like late 20s or early 30s.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't understand why they would get nervous before the shows. I was drinking my rosehip tea with 2 cubes of sugar in it and couldn't wait till the curtain go up. And at the same time, everybody else is like nervous. And so I was a kid, and I had to grow up very quick.
Mm-hmm. So
funny.
According to your bio, you did some additional training at the Kirov School. Is that correct? How did that sort of come about? You were already dancing professionally. What was it that made you feel like, okay, I need to continue to hone my technique in an academic way?
It all started when I started exposing myself, from Finnish National Ballet School, summertime doing the best national summer workshop, then went to Denmark and London, and then added Paris and Cannes. And I was looking at the world of ballet, from the global perspective. And I bought books that I read all through the winter and found my inspiration. And, if I didn't understand a word, I would underline it and look at it from dictionary. And so I was like a dance history buff. And I also wanted to know where the dance is and what's happening and what's new. And that brought, Jagiellon's Ballet Russe, of course, Rudolf Nureyev, and then Baryshnikov, and Makarov, and Nijinsky. And suddenly I realized that all those people, Balanchine also, that like I admired, that all come from St. Petersburg. And after the Second World War, there was an exchange program between Russia and Finland. They sent people to Finland how to study how to build paper factories and things like that. And we definitely don't want to build anything like the Russians do in Finland. So we took the scholarships into the, in the arts, the Moscow Conservatory, Kirov Ballet Academy. And there was a single scholarship that I got. And I took a year of leave of absence. And it was a remarkable year. It was just... I got very lucky.
It's relatively close to you, right? I mean, in my mind, at least, Finland and Russia are neighbors. So it's like, it's kind of amazing that, the like epicenter of ballet was something that was next door. Yeah.
I mean, it's like almost Russia is a little too close to comfort. Before Second World War, the border between Finland and Russia was like 20 miles, 25 miles from St. Petersburg. And if I look at my grandparents, were born like right there on a border. So there was something, I felt at home when I was in St. Petersburg. And of course, it's easy. It's very different because this is a big, massive city that was built by, started by Peter the Great. And doesn't look like Finland at all. And but it was a very special time. I was very lucky. My teacher, Oleg Germanovich Sokolov, was like the teacher at the school, and he took a very special interest in me, and he even moved the school forward, and the way they were training. And it was still the era when Konstantin Sergeyev and Dudinskaya was there. I got to do my first Nutcracker, except I didn't do the little mouse. I started with the lead role. That was a blast.
So I'm curious, of course, we think so much of the Kirov training being very disciplined and very strict, and you coming from already knowing what it's like to be a professional dancer and then kind of going back not only just to a studio and a student environment again, but also that strict environment. What was that like for you? Was there a sort of culture shock, or did you just kind of eat it all up?
I ate it all up, and I just wanted it so bad. I mean, I just, I was a good boy. I mean, I did everything and beyond, and I just worked. And, professional environment is you have the responsibility. Hopefully you're as strict with yourself about your ballet technique. Then, it's not what your teacher asks. It's you, it's your progress, it's your knowledge. So I was a lot tougher always, on myself probably than some of my teachers.
Yeah.
And bullheaded.
Were you ever interested in dancing professionally in Russia?
It's so funny because 1979, 1980, dancing professionally in Russia as a foreigner, there were a couple people that had been taken in.
But not many.
And, they show here, show there. But it was pretty clear for me what was expected in return on that. You have to sort of, I never faced a situation where I was asked to, but pretty much they were expected to tell on their friends and, snoop like a little informants. And I knew that. And
it's not appealing.
not something I would ever do.
Interesting.
So, but you did, one thing that I think marks your tenure as an artistic director is you're very ambitious, but I'm sure that started early. And when we look at your resume as a dancer, that comes across to me. So you didn't stay in Finland. The first company you danced with after was Dutch National. What was that? What kind of spurred that for you? Were you just like, I need to move on to something that's going to feed me in a different way, or?
Well, by then I had already spent time in America several times, and I was looking into potential work opportunities. And then I decided to audition for, I think I set up auditions for like 3 companies in Europe. And Dutch National was first one of them. And this was, I think, like early May, and Rudy Van Dancing gave me a opportunity that I just couldn't resist, and I was very happy. Went in. I was 20 years old, and I think one of the first things I did a Bluebird in a Sleeping Beauty and a couple other things in it, and then it was amazing. 2+ years, like I got so much there, and I really felt that the company was an artistic environment. There was 3 house choreographers, Rudy Van Dancing, Hans van Maan, and Torben Strijk. Yet we did works from Nijinsky, Ashton, the classics, lots of Balanchine works. It's like your kid in a candy store. I just wanted to dance everything and learn as much as possible and improve. And, it was a big company, about 100 dancers. And then I, it was, but sometimes the European pace is not as driven as, like in America. And I had already fell in love with American dance because of its absolute physicality and the hyper musicality. And then I went to a Basel that was run by Heinz Sperli, and he had excellent company, and he was very accomplished choreographer himself. And oh my God, we worked like the discipline of the company was incredibly tight. And it didn't bother me one bit. I enjoyed my colleagues, and there was very nice touring. And then I was getting close to being in my mid-20s and getting like the first 10 years of my dancing. And I said, if I love American dance, I don't want to just understand it intellectually. I need to be in it. And luckily landed at the right place, San Francisco Ballet, Helge Thomason's 3rd year in a company. And I felt immediately at home.
Even when I started dancing, I think it was less common for dancers to sort of explore being in other companies. And I know the culture in America, at least back then, would have been very much like you get into your place and you stay there the whole time. Was that what it was like in Europe? Or do you think that this just speaks to your personal ambition and interest that you were willing to take a risk and join different companies at such a young age?
Well, I think it's true for both sides,
Mm-hmm.
you know. For example, Finnish National Ballet, you know, they're talking, oh, it should be Finnish ballet, but you know, now there's quite a bit of foreigners,
Mm-hmm.
and people tend to stay where they are in their country,
Right.
and this, that. Then there are some people who have a little bit more want to have other experiences or curiosity, and you know, like I have, you know, I'm a fabulously impatient person. I get things done,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm willing to go work really hard,
Right.
and I enjoy achieving things.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as, you know, done something, then I need to learn something new. Otherwise, I get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Right.
have to learn all the time something that's exciting for me in life.
See, I think that is what you just said really definitely in my mind defines you as an artistic director, which I want to get to in one second. But let's talk a little bit more about your time at San Francisco Ballet first. What were those years like? It was early in Helgi Thomason's reign as artistic director. So did you feel like things were changing? What was the culture of the company like? And what were you dancing?
I think what happened was, you know, like changes always change.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen overnight. And I think the transition from Michael Smune to Helgi, you know, it wasn't a smooth one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, but Helgi knew what he wanted, and he was brought there to do a job. And boy, has he done a job. When I was 35 years or something like that. So I think all the early turmoil was just sort of done. There was little residue of that.
Mm-hmm.
He'd done some changes in a personnel, and you know, it's interesting. Me and Tony Randazzo, we joined the company on the same day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the same day.
Now Tony is also, you know, my ballet master here since my whole tenure. And I just remember us getting to dance just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I love the environment. You know, Helgi was teaching, Bonnie Bourne was ballet mistress, and Irina Jakobson was teaching. So, you know, I wanted to learn as much from Bonnie about the, you know, train the balancing way, which was not my upbringing. And then Irina Jakobson was just like perhaps the best academic classical teacher I've ever seen. And I'm so grateful for not only for her friendship, but what I learned from her. And when I look at the people of that period of San Francisco Ballet, oh my God, how she has influenced them all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I see the way they teach, and I'm like, I know the structure, blah, blah, blah. And so Irina was also a big part of the reason there. And I was very happy. I often mentioned that she's like a family for me, like my professional mother.
Mm-hmm.
And just the luckiest guy in the world to have worked with her. And, you know, like when I was in Russia, she saw my examination. She was best friends with my teacher's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was in Holland, she was a guest teacher there. I'm putting a ballet by Leonard Jacobson up, and she lived across the street from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that she seemed lonely, and I would say, Irina, let's go to check the museum out on the weekends. And we already had a connection there, and I always like cooking. So I would say, Irina, I just got some great reindeer meat from Finland. I'm going to make a dinner for you. Why don't you come over? So that lineage was just really, really great.
That's amazing.
Right. Did it feel to you at all like kind of a leap of faith to join a company that had just transitioned? There wasn't, I guess, really any establishment as to what Helgi was going to do, what direction he was going to take the company in. Was that something that worried you, or you were just so focused on being in America and dancing with a company like San Francisco Ballet?
Well, actually, I would have never joined San Francisco Ballet prior.
Mm-hmm.
I see. It was so Helgi was the draw for you.
Yeah, and I had seen Helgi dance a lot, and I also trusted Irina. I asked her earlier, and initially said no, absolutely not. And then when Helgi came there, and he said, "All right, I'm going to be full time there," and she said, "Yeah, I think we're good."
That makes sense.
Yeah. And by the way, I like to take risks.
We can tell that too.
So
you can't be too. If you're just willing to work and learn and are open-minded, if you build yourself to one company to this level, you can always do that in the next company. But when you re-establish yourself in the next company, hopefully you put the house together even better and you become better dancer. And then you can, some people are they want to hold on to that. I'm a little soloist, and if I go somewhere, I have to be a little soloist, And it's just like, it doesn't matter. It's all about dancing and dancing well and learning the most you can.
You've kind of had a similar process as an artistic director, as an artistic leader. You've run several different organizations before Boston Ballet. So I'm curious, what were your ambitions in those terms while you were dancing? Did you always think, "Hey, someday I want to be an artistic director"? And what made you decide that it was the point in your dance career to shift from being a principal dancer on stage every night to finding a position of artistic leadership?
Well, it's the first question. Really, I don't know why. I think I was still in, maybe around 18 years old, and of course, you wanted to be the greatest dancer in the world. And I was like, damn, maybe I'm not going to be the greatest dancer in the world, but I'm going to do the damnedest to learn the most, and I want to be a super pro. I want to be this super pro and make the most out of what I have. And I was very lucky. I sort of passed that, what I thought I could do 2-3 times. And so I felt very at peace with my career in a way. And then I thought that maybe my bigger contribution will be as a director than just an individual dancer. And quickly I realized there's no place to go study it. So start self-educating. And since I was interested in a global dance anyway, that was not a chore. That was just what I wanted to see. I collected videotapes, and I had this network of exchanging tapes. There was a new production in Paris. I needed to see how it was. Swap tapes, and I had all the periodicals that published in different languages, and I went through them every month. And then in San Francisco, I saw how the fundraising and how the companies position themselves. Then I aligned my interest on dance history and sort of the current state of the world of dance with the engagements or speaking engagements. I started in St. Mary's College and then eventually in Stanford University. I did a lecture on a history of Sleeping Beauty from its origins and how it started in Russia and how it grew in Europe, where it went in Russia, and how it came to England, and what it was Sleeping Beauty that we know in America today. That was fun because the Bay Area critics were listening a week before the opening night of the Sleeping Beauty, and then the last part of it, I always knew I want to run a big company, really big company, So that was, a goal. I decided, I was about 19 years in a profession. I realized my body was, giving up on me, and I learned I had a really worn out hip, and because of that, I had a couple of herniated discs, and there was no way of really continuing, and I probably stopped delivering at the level that I had delivered for the company. So it was like, why prolong the pain for me, and done. And luckily, I think week later, I was offered a job as an artistic director with the Marin Ballet.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I was going to ask which one came first. So you made that decision with no plans that you were going to retire, and then this came into your lap.
It really came, and it's a Marin Ballet is a big school with a sort of a little junior company, and I said, this is not what I want as my goal.
Mm-hmm.
They had a director that had partied, they lost part of the students, and I said, okay, I'll take it on until I have a professional company. I'll do my very best, but I'm not going to be able to commit for ever. When that happens, that's when I'm going to move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was our deal.
Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like, if you knew that it had an end, it's almost like a laboratory for you to sort of cut your teeth on. You found your way as your first time as an artistic leader.
Yeah. Well, it's, I looked at it either, you hang on to an ego and say, I come from a big company.
Mm-hmm.
I was a principal dancer. I'm on my white horse. I expect this. And I was like, it's the same job.
Mm-hmm.
Just roll up your sleeves. Running a school like that, or mid-sized company, or major company, it's all about leadership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have different resources. You have more help in the different scales. It's not really that much easier or harder.
Right.
It's just the scale is just different. All the principles behind it are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So your next leadership position was at Alberta Ballet in Canada. So what was that opportunity like for you? Were you putting your feelers out constantly, trying to find something? How did that opportunity come about for you?
It came as a favor for a friend. I was first. I was like, I don't think the company is the right match. Mm-hmm. I said, in last time I heard about them was in this issue of Dance Magazine. There was a story on them. I don't hear much of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it was a Mavis Staines, the director of the National Ballet School. I said, why don't you go and just talk to them and take a look at the situation?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it started. And I went there and I saw the theater. I was like, And I looked at the company and I just got intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
Calgary Philharmonics and Edmonton Symphony playing for them, not enough performances. And I just saw how it could be sort of tweaked.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to work, and we did a wonderful thing with that company and got it touring internationally, changed the focus of the sort of small classical ballet company with this sort of a commitment to contemporary dance and really being relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, like in a business school, they would tell you, you need to create customer loyalty, that you can sell X equals X.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be Sleeping Beauty.
Right.
And one year we were like really down the season and I was out of money and I need to do one more program. So I created this festival of new works, basically just world premieres from unknown choreographers, but really taking it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of them were not that successful and some were incredibly successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Jorma did his very first professional piece of choreography. And but then the second year, it was like packed.
Mm-hmm.
And, it got traction and the audience is there. They said, anytime we go to see the company, we feel great. So they just, bought into what we're doing. And it was so wonderful to see.
Mm-hmm. It's making me think there is this sort of balance you have to find as an artistic director, that if you lean too heavily on things that are certainties, like a full length, like Sleeping Beauty and Swan Lake that will pack a house, but then you tip over into this point where then it's not fresh, it's sort of stayed or a little flat or dull. So how do you find the balance between doing things that, like those war horses that are going to get people in seats, but then also maintaining relevance through things that are going to stimulate art scores that demand a little more?
Well, there's two things in that. The first thing is you have to decide what is the perspective that you want for the company.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have decided in Boston, we do the big classical ballets. We focus on neoclassical dance and serious commitment to contemporary dance. So it's a 3 doors. It's inclusive, not exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's relevant to today's people, all generations. And I don't care which is your entry point. My job is to seduce you and cross over and enjoy the whole array of it. The second part, what I would say for people who try to fix their finances with these big ballets is, A, look at your budgets. Everything loses money except Nutcracker.
Right.
So you might be selling a couple more tickets for some of those productions, but you're still losing money.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If you do work that's interesting, is really art, really good quality, you can find people who want to support you to very different extent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in America, we depend so much on a revenue, and it's not government revenue.
Right.
It's not city revenue.
Mm-hmm.
City of Boston supports us with $1,500 out of $37 million. This was the first year that from National Endowment of the Arts we got a 0.
Oof.
So I depend 90% on individual donors and like a small margin of corporate.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly those decisions become much clearer.
Right.
It's like, do you want to have the slow death of just being a museum?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a living theater for today's people. But there's the education process for the dancers. I want the dancers to be educated through the productions of all this. They need to know all that, then they become better dancers. I don't try to educate my audiences. I expose these works to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think it works.
Did you have government support in Canada?
Yes, more than here.
Right.
But
no, I just was thinking, like, the National Endowment for the Arts has just been shrinking continually for the past few decades. So that's still pretty minimal, even if they are committing to you. But how was that a surprise to you when you came to Boston Ballet, this sort of shift in how you had to raise money? Before, maybe you could count on the government more, but now what were you doing to pursue individual donors or maybe some corporate sponsors that would be different from what your first experiences were like?
Well, in Canada, like the company had a very small government support. I think the first thing I went with my chairman to Ottawa and talked to the Canada Council. We got 600% increase into government funding. If you understand the numbers right, you understand how small the initial grant. But then I got frustrated with, after, 3 years of really changing the company to totally different thing.
Right.
Still funded at the same level.
Right.
And, but it's, let's say that it's 20% of the company's budget. But, the 20% of our budget right now will be very helpful and make things easier, but it's not there. And this is in Canada, people feel like they pay a little bit higher taxes, that then it's, the government assists, and the giving culture is very different.
Right.
It's 80% there corporate and 20% individual.
Right.
When I came to Boston, it was 80-20,
right.
But the other way.
Right.
Now it's 90-something individual, and
wow.
And it's you don't go and ask money. You don't try to squeeze. You explain what are you doing, why are you doing. You're building bridges of understanding, and at the end, when people are incredibly generous, they feel so good about it because they understand what is the impact for the organization, and they find so much meaning in it because we're all doing it together. I'm not successful. We are all together successful. They have allowed Boston Ballet to be successful, me to be successful, for our dancers to be successful. It's like, it's much more communal effort. Not one person can do that.
When you were at Alberta Ballet, it looks like you spent 1 year also as executive director. Is that correct? You had both positions at the same time. So how did that inform you? And because it's a completely different side of things, right? In the artistic realm, but still very connected. What did you learn from that? And how did you take some of those skills with you to Boston Ballet?
Well, it's, if I put it very simply, every artistic decision is financial decision. Every financial decision is an artistic decision. It was about leadership. It was about, like aligning. Let's not spend too much time in a process on this element on the marketing. Let's do this. Let's try this and put all our focus into it. Sort of realigning things, and I enjoyed it. But my God, the amount of work, it's crazy.
I bet.
And then, of course, when I came to Boston the first year, we didn't have executive director here. So I was not officially, but it was me and the chairman. I was doing pretty much the same thing. Then another time I was actually formally executive director in Boston Ballet on an interim basis for, was it a year and a half, something like that. And then last time when a transition with the executive director, then naturally you cover that aspect. But if I could ask for one thing, I would say, I think I've been there, done that. I'd love never to have to do that again.
Yeah. That's funny because I was wondering if it almost is better in a way because you're kind of both arms. So you obviously agree on everything. Is it, you don't have to work around someone else. But if you have someone in that position that you really share the same values with, I imagine obviously it's helpful.
It's a difficult thing because, the way things are set up in America, both of the jobs are so difficult, like Michael, I'm pulled more out of the studio now than when you were here. And it's this constant, like tug of war.
Right.
You have to go where you're the most needed for the organization. And then executive director's job is really, really tough job. And both jobs are 24/7. So you put both on top of each other. And I have also seen the environment change even in the last 20 years, quite a bit. Like I don't think you can really today be artistic director the way it was 30 years ago.
Right. I mean, when people talk about Balanchine, it was just so he had Lincoln backing him permanently, but now you kind of have to be the Lincoln too. You have to be the face of it, has to also have an understanding of finances that I don't think was required, decades ago.
Yeah. And also I feel for the executive directors. I mean, it's a grueling job. There's so much expected from you, from communications and, board development. And, of course, the AD and ED work on many of these things together, but, whoa, that's a pressure cooker, and the environment is not that fertile in so many ways. If you look at the arts funding, you have to be so creative and find a new ways, and it's the pressure. It's a true pressure cooker.
So what was the environment like at Boston Ballet financially and artistically when you first started out as director?
Well, the company hadn't had a director for, I think, 1.5 years, something like that. So when I first arrived, it was clear that the company was good. They had very good, arm coordination and overall coordination. There was, I was brought here to do change. The board of directors they felt that they run that road to the end, and they wanted to refocus the company. So I pitched to them that I want to balance it by different repertoire, and because of that, I need to change some of the training. And they had very, very good individual teachers, but even a couple of the teachers that I ended up ballet masters, I ended up letting go. it was not. One of them was excellent, but the company didn't hear them. They were talking, and it just like didn't.
Gel.
It had been too long, and you needed to refresh. So I brought all new artistic team, some more successfully than less, but I understood the importance of change. And there were some things people liked it the way it was before, and it's like anytime when you take change, it takes some time.
Sure.
And emphasis, I immediately lengthened the company class by 15 minutes to an hour and a half, because the training is so essential.
Right.
Our injury rate went immediately down, and lots of positive things. I wanted more musicality in approach and articulation, different level of point work, and it's like what was some individuals considered it artistry, that every night they went and did it just slightly differently. And for me, that was just way too much skating. The ballet, you can't do that in a value system that I want. And that is not called musicality. I'm sorry.
Right.
So when a new artistic director comes in for dancers, it can often be like a very scary time that feels unstable. So how did you kind of balance that stability that you needed to give the dancers, and giving them that chance to kind of adapt to the new environment while still needing to stay true to yourself and true to your vision for the company?
That's an excellent question, because it's you basically explain to the company what you're going to do, what we are all going to do together. And in some areas it might be lifting the ante up here, and who can live up to it, great, and who can't, then you have to make decisions. But you empower people into you believe in them, and you work with them, you communicate with them, and sometimes we are our own worst enemies. I certainly been many times in my life. And the bottom line here is every artistic director needs great dancers, good dancers, excellent dancers, always. So just get to work and put your ego aside and try to get there and create an environment where we try to help everybody. And everybody is not going to make it. And then you do that a couple times, and suddenly there's a shift. And then you have a big, stable body of philosophically aligned dancers who you are training them to be tools for these choreographers. They have to be open-minded and skilled. And that's when the dancers get the most out of it, and it's more fun for them. That's why they work so hard.
Right.
To be that wonderful tool in the hands of somebody like William Forsythe.
Definitely want to talk more about the company's relationship with Forsythe, which is a huge deal now. But one thing I want to talk about, because it feels so appropriate in today's climate, is I think one of the real markers of your directorship is the way that you have consistently and completely led the company through several financial crises. It's like you started out and there were issues that were totally beyond your control. You coming in and with I'm not sure what year it was, but when the company got kicked out of the Wang for the Nutcracker, which is just the Nutcracker, as you said, it's the only profitable time of the year. And that just sort of was sinking the company financially, but you steered the ship out of that. Then you just get slammed with the recession. So, but all these times you've come out of it better off financially than you were to start off. So is this something that you feel like, not that I'm not going to say you enjoy it, but it's something like it seems to go hand in hand with your ambition, your way that you're just like, there's a problem. I'm going to solve it. I need to improve my dancing this way. I'm going to work harder. I need to get us out of the hole. We're going to do this. What were those moments like for you leading the company out of these sort of dark times?
Well, it's, I have to say that, nobody enjoys those times. Tough times bring people together. And tough times also energize people.
Right.
And I always say tough times don't last, tough people do.
Hmm.
I signed my contract 5 days before 9/11 in 2001.
Oh my gosh.
So that was the first bet.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Nutcracker dislocation, was really, we were kicked out. And I think there was lots of, the intent was us not to survive that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so close to death blow, but we did survive.
Right.
And we came out of it better because of certain positionings that we did.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about that for a little longer? I remember the situation at the time being a huge deal, but what exactly tell me about some of the things that you had to personally navigate through. It's not just like, okay, we don't have the theater, we move on over to the next place, but it was, the capacity was completely altered. You had, the production itself didn't fit. Is that right?
Yeah. It was basically, we were served the notice very late.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish it was just good intentions. And it put the Nutcracker in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it has been a staple of the city. And I didn't want to vacate it. I didn't want to leave a break.
No.
And so we decided, we booked still a big theater, about 1,800 seater Colonial Theater.
Mm-hmm.
But the stage size was different. We could never have put that production, the Nutcracker that we had at the Wang Center, on that stage. So we built a whole new production. The financial impact of it was, $8+ million of the company budget of 19 million at that time. It was, and we probably had some liabilities as well. So it was like, we were really our back against the wall. But then the following year we went to the Opera House, which was great fit, and a year later I moved all our operations away from the Wang and to the Opera House, and that's when I was executive director. At the same time, we rebranded the company, gave a whole new image, and launched a new feature.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then,
how much advance notice did you have before you had to completely build a brand new production of Nutcracker?
This renewal was supposed to happen, I think, like the first of the year, right? Like ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some delays, and I might be wrong, but I think we got the word sometime in April or something like that. And so you gotta move quick.
Right.
Wow, that's impressive. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you got out of that hole, and then we moved to the recession.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we started patching things, and the platform, our foundation for the Boston Ballet was better and getting stronger, but naturally still vulnerable. And then 2008 was the time when, I was the interim executive director. I didn't have a chairman of the board, and it was sort of a transition, and then we were hit with the big financial dilemma, and lots of people got really worried about their personal wealth and families, just like now, and quite a few people parted ways from the board, and then luckily we had nucleus who looked at this situation and said, Boston Ballet is not in a horrible situation. This is a short term, like we are undercapitalized. And we got external analysts. One of our board members lent his companies, very credible analysts, to analyze our finances, because I'm a naive Finn. I think people tell you the truth, but people just talk through their teeth, like you can see today, perfect examples all the time. Right. And I said, I don't want to go to the Boston community and give them something that would be considered lip service.
Right.
We need credible story here, and it has to be external. And basically, we put this plan in place and said we need to raise $10 million. And believe it or not, we did it very fast.
Right.
At the time, we got a couple of new people, we got a new chairman, and the nucleus that was with the company, together with the chairman, we paid off the debt. Then we renovated our building, we invested in productions, and we started flying, clicking at a totally different speed. And, we built our studio theater into 19 Clarendon. Now we've had a Lincoln Center season, London season. We just had a Paris season a year ago. We got the company where I sort of wanted.
Right.
It took a lot longer than I thought.
So kind of going along these same lines, how has your experience been so far leading Boston Ballet through this COVID-19 pandemic? Obviously, it's not nearly close to over, but you've probably had to make some really tough decisions so far. And can you tell us a little bit about what your mindset's been like during this time?
Well, this is different from the other because there was something concrete each time,
right,
in a past, and you just have to figure how to get from here to there. Right now, the earth is moving. You don't even know where you are today.
Right.
And tomorrow you're in a different place. And so you have to sort of orchestrate the future while the ground that you're standing is actually moving under you. Yeah. So in a way, you have to be very patient. You really have to listen. You have to be very strategic, and don't expect that this is just going to go away.
Right.
Be ready. Have your short-term strategies and actions very clear. Understand that there might be a midterm issue,
right,
and there might be a really long-term. So be ready for these 3 rounds and let your understanding of the 3rd round that you wish you never have to deal with inform some of the decisions in a round 1. Because if you don't, you're irresponsible.
Right.
Because ultimately, my job is to be the gatekeeper for this art form, but this organization needs to exist.
Right.
So I have to protect the existence of the organization, and then with the people in it. I'm very proud of our board right now. Everybody agrees we want to keep Boston Ballet as we are. This is the scale that we do. This is the kind of approach we do. Otherwise, they would not have any interest to be part of it. And I'm on the same page.
Right.
It's like, this is not the time to scale back and change the whole concept. And that would be really, really detrimental in so many ways. So we're trying to navigate these uncertain times with strategies and understand that the whole environment is different now. And when we come out of it, it's going to be a different world.
Could you tell us at all about some of the things you're considering? Is there a world where we have performances where the audience maintains social distance? Is that something that one could consider, or does it just not make any financial sense?
You're asking the wrong person. Well, the thing is, of course, we're focusing on getting lots of material into social media, virtual things as understood today. But I'm also trying to percolate something that's quite different.
Right.
And we're in the early stages of that. And I think those elements, if we get to sort of a normalcy that looks a little bit like how it was in the past, those parts will be part of it anyway.
Right.
But, the social distancing, and you're very smart. You just said that the key word there was the economics of it.
Yeah.
It's like everything loses money anyway. So let's say that if we make only a third of the money, it's like we're starting to bleed to death.
Right.
Right.
And, it's just like, and how fun would it be, every 4th person in the orchestra, sitting in the audience with a mask. Let's get the testing. Let's get the drugs that help people deal with if they get contract the virus, and let's work on a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And the testing is the key. So you want to isolate
Right.
the people people are going to get sick, but there's going to be less and less.
Mm-hmm.
There's room in the hospitals
Mm-hmm.
when it's not peaking out of control. And, I'm not a clairvoyant, but, I just don't see the other experience. And I rather wait to the moment that we can go all together back in
Right.
there and just have enough testing and find a way through that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much the only one who thinks like this. Everybody else seems to think. I just can't see. I don't see
Right.
anything fun or enjoyable.
Well, the other thing is that dance, of course, every art form is really heavily impacted by this, but dance is special in that, we could stay at home and play our cello and practice, and we can sing. But aside from the well-documented Zoom bars that everyone is doing throughout this, you can't replace the experience of rehearsing and being with other people. You can't create, think of the way that so many ballets are. Serenade doesn't look like Serenade if the girls are standing 6 feet apart.
Right.
So it's a uniquely impacted art form. So that sort of is going to have to inform everything that you do as a leader. And one of those things being like I was saying, it doesn't replace the rehearsal process. So your dancers are going to come back by no fault of their own, very out of shape.
Yeah.
That's
something I think about all the time. Like the dancers it's not like you can open up and then the next week be on stage. I'm sure that's something that you're constantly considering too. So what does that kind of look like too? Getting the dancers ready and back in space that's effective for them.
Well, it's going to be a slightly different process, and probably like the material that we put out on a social media.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the luxury to be as scrutinizing now than some other time.
Right.
So there's a little bit leeway.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a little bit leeway in that front.
Right.
I don't think it's realistic not to.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Well, let's not end on this note. Let's talk about some of the artistic achievements that you've brought in over the course of your time as director. And I think one that I know that you personally are immensely proud of, but that I think really has meant a lot to the dancers and audience, is the relationship with William Forsythe that has developed and that has brought some really incredible art. And I think it's unlike anything else that's being cultivated in the United States right now. So how did you begin to bring Forsythe in to Boston Ballet, and why has it made such a good fit for the company and for Bill too?
Well, I've always been a fan of his choreography, and he even changed me as a dancer in San Francisco in one rehearsal. I was working with him, and I always was fascinated with his work, and I found it quite hard. And in 1 hour, he liberated me totally.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a better dancer in everything else. So then when I came here, my first program was Mark Morris's Maelstrom, Bill's In the Middle Somewhat Elevated, and Jorma Elo's world premiere. So then I was talking with him, and, we did middle again. Then we did the second detail. And when I would see him somewhere, I said, "You got to come." And then he came when we went to Lincoln Center with the second detail. He came and he was like, "Wow, I really love the dancers, their openness and their skill level." And say, "This is how I want to work." And then he said, "Well, it took quite a while to get me here, right?" I said, "Yeah, about 10 years." And then that relationship started, and he's so at home. He loves to work here. He loves the dancers. He asks so much, and everybody delivers. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, this is a dream come true. I don't know if I could have dreamt of situation, because as now his new home company.
Right.
So awesome.
And my job is never to try to tell him what to do. My job is to enable him to do what he wants to do.
Right.
Is that great of an artist?
And I'm sure he loves that too, obviously. That makes
There's some benefits to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our interview, but we have just one short little bit left that we like to call our lightning round. So we ask you just one thing and you let us know the first thing that pops into your mind. So first question is, if you could come back to the stage tomorrow and perform any ballet, what would it be?
Demon Variations.
Good
Great
one.
pick. Is there a role, a ballet that was created after your time as a dancer that you would particularly enjoy dancing?
I think the year after I retired, I saw ballet by Christopher Bruce, and I was like, it's the Immigrant Story. The name escapes me. Once in a while, there are ballets I think like, oh, I would have loved to have done.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you have a dream production for Boston Ballet? You have no budget, sky's the limit. What would you do?
So many. Well, I'll tell you one of them, which is probably never going to happen because we have such a great Sleeping Beauty with David Walker sets and all that. I have always dreamt of white Sleeping Beauty. Everything is white.
Oh.
Different shades of white.
Mm-hmm.
And you use color, but like just 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how, if it's a certain peachy orange, but there's just a little bit of it. And it's contrasted with the shiny plastic white to warm velvet white to create that kind of a big ballet, but in a totally avant-garde way.
Cool. I like it.
Lastly, is there something that you're doing personally that you find is helping you through quarantine?
Maybe a book, a TV show, movie, podcast.
I'm very lucky because I'm sheltering up here in Maine. I have a place, and there's a river, and I go catch trout at the right
fishing.
time.
Oh, that's fun.
That's great.
Fishing, and then the other thing, I rekindled something I did when I was a kid. I'm starting to put some stamp collections together.
Oh, fun.
Cool.
And when I start something, yes, I'm a little obsessive.
But that's what makes you good at what you do.
Yeah.
I like that. That all sounds very relaxing and meditative. That's just what you need right now.
A nice contrast for the stress that I deal with daily.
Can't even imagine.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Mikko. We really appreciate it. And best of luck to everyone at Boston Ballet in the coming year. So thank you.
You guys have been great, and you're doing a great job. So.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Great talking.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you would like to support the Conversations on Dance podcast, there are a few ways that you can help. Click over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Download episodes when you listen to allow our analytics to better understand our listenership. Join our Facebook group, Conversations on Dance, Friends of the Pod, or you can offer a donation. Conversations on Dance has always been and will always be free to our listeners. You can help us continue to create and produce this unique behind-the-curtain look at the dance world by visiting conversationsondancepod.com/support. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week.